This is all about exposing ScreenCloud, positioning ScreenCloud. That's what it's there for, really. The book is a tool for further things. So if we put a bit of marketing behind this, and there are some interesting concepts in this book, genuinely, like, I mean, the exploration of like the future of work and transformation, this is definitely something people are interested in.
So yeah, we're going to talk this episode about our latest endeavor. Well, I say it's latest. We've been endeavoring it for a little while now. I don't know about you, Mark, but it's almost like sounds terribly self-indulgent to admit that you're writing a book. Like, I don't know. I kind of like, I've always cringed. I know. Well, we're doing a podcast about writing a book. I always kind of cringe a little bit when I tell people, because I just kind of think, oh no. And also the next question is what's it about? And the way we're writing this is it's kind of a little bit exploratory. So we kind of broadly know what it's about, but we haven't got that pithy one sentence.
I know what you mean, because I kind of offset it by saying, but it will be shit.
Well, maybe that's what we should, we should sort of go to the beginning, because we're not looking to write a New York Times bestseller. We decided, I guess, probably had a conversation with Jürgen about 2 months ago, probably, maybe. And writing a book seemed to be a really good solution to the particular problem.
Well, for me, it starts like about a week earlier than that conversation. But that was the conversation where that was the first time anyone mentioned a book. It was actually, it came from a sort of general sense that I've had for a while, especially with our really big customers, that, is this going to sound bad to say it was a bit the blind leading the blind? In the fact that our customers were using their screens extensively to communicate a lot of the times internally, but also to customers. But a lot of the really more complicated installations were to communicate to their teams. And it felt a bit like, to a degree, we were all just trying to figure out what people wanted to see and what would actually be useful. And I just thought, you know what, in my experience in other things, there's normally, to a degree, there's a playbook, right? Like if you were building a website these days, there's kind of a playbook. Like you wouldn't even have to have a meeting, and you could probably put a bit of a basic core, website architecture document together of just things you would expect to see, like for your company, right? You'd probably do that. If you were doing kind of a marketing campaign, there's probably a bit of a playbook of some key elements you would need to do in order to do that. And it felt to me that there just wasn't this for how you use screens to communicate to teams, and what would be expected, and what's the right amount to show, what's overkill, what's not enough, what's oversharing, what's not relevant, what is that? And so I'd gone back to like my professional services team and just said, let's write the playbook. Like let's aim for, if you're like a large corporate company, if you just followed these steps and did this, 60, 70%, or maybe even more of what you wanted to achieve would get achieved by following this thing. So it was very practical. Like it was very like, do this. This is the amount of HR updates you should have. Here's some company news. Here's some local stuff. Here's some like team sharing photos. Here's like pictures of the dogs. Like, like all of that. Like, what is the sort of pyramid model to do? And that's where it began for me. So then I started talking to you and Jürgen and the marketing team, and it kind of became, let's say, bigger.
I think from my point of view as well, like there was something that when we heard something from Gartner, like it's about a year, maybe not quite a year ago. Someone that we know spoke to Gartner about this industry and about the different competitors, and they were saying like ScreenCloud, really, really good product, but generally bought by the end user rather than the kind of budget owner. And that really resonated for me. It's like, oh my God. Because obviously we've done very, very well talking to a certain group of people, and we love them. They're great. The nice thing about the kind of customers that we have is generally they really understand the detail. They can get into the detail of it. But quite often when you talk to them, especially for larger sort of purchases, the budget decision has been made 2 months, maybe 2 years before. I mean, I think quite often, I'm thinking one or two big companies, I won't necessarily mention them, but when I spoke to them about how they got their budgets, it was like, oh, well, I was able to do it because we decided to do digital signage 2 years ago, and I was replacing a legacy system with something more modern. And so one of the challenges I guess we had is like, how do we have those conversations? How do we open the door and kind of talk to those people? So I think that there's a kind of, so I think part of this is really like, I guess permission, or is it permission? But it's almost like a foot in the door. It's like a calling card saying, look, we've got we think this is quite an interesting area, and we're seeing sort of rapid change, and we're seeing winners and losers. And actually we really need to talk to you. We need to also talk to the people who are going to implement it, but we really need to talk to you to convince you to basically think about this and think about how you might resource it within your organization and who's going to be owning it and that kind of stuff. So, and I should say as well that so as part of our kind of, we first started saying, right, we're going to write a book, and then actually you went out and found this company called Scribe Writing School, or Scribe Media, who kind of guide you through that process. And I think that's been really useful because it's, inevitably when you come to writing a book, and we're not really today going to talk about the book itself, we're going to talk about the process. So anyone who's thinking of writing a book, hopefully there'll be some useful things here. But one of the things that they said is like, you go through a kind of normal process in writing a book. And one of the things you really need to think about is kind of obvious really, is who that user is, who you're actually writing for. Because if you're writing for everybody, it becomes really, it's not really for anyone. So really trying to push us down that route. I think, I think that was the sort of genesis of it. It's like, as you say, there isn't really a playbook. There isn't really, especially in terms of the way that we're thinking about the kind of where this is all going. It's still kind of new. It's still emerging. Things like automation and stuff like that is still an emerging kind of sort of function, technology, if you like. But also for us specifically at ScreenCloud, having a slightly different conversation with a slightly different person.
And I think it's maybe interesting to sort of just highlight, like, for anyone who's listening who hasn't sort of seen, they might be going, "You're a digital company. Why are you writing a damn book? Like, they're so old fashioned." Mm-hmm. There is something about, maybe worth exploring a little bit about the business of books and how that's kind of worked for others. I think there's a couple of notable tech companies. I mean, there's actually quite a lot of tech companies have published books, or founders of tech companies have actually published books. I mean, there's actually loads of them, really. The one I suppose the one that we've kind of looking at specifically has been Drift, who kind of wrote a book, but also the book in itself was also defining their category, which was conversational marketing, which was kind of like a new concept. And the book sort of illustrated that very much. And that very much kind of positioned that company, hooked around that, rather than just being like a live chat application or whatever, which it could have been grouped with. Yes. So it's kind of about trying to sort of segment yourself a little differently from the crowd. And is about positioning. And I think actually, we might dive into that bit first, and then there's something else I was going to talk about. But like, I think one of the really interesting byproducts of us trying to write this, so just to give a sort of status update, we're sort of in the first draft phase, of which we can talk a bit about how David's doing much better than I am in a second as well. Okay. But we're kind of like, we've spec'd out a book outline, and we're in that. But what I have found as an interesting byproduct so far is it has really got me to think, inevitably, so much deeper into stuff that I had otherwise slightly taken for granted, of kind of things I knew. And I think you found the same as well, haven't you?
Yeah, and especially talking to customers specifically about, so rather than talking to customers about, digital signage or whatever, but talking about So, for example, I did a sort of interview with BASF, their kind of head of digital comms and head of internal comms, about some of the elements, some of the sort of subjects that we were going over in the book, and specifically about how they deal with, BASF, huge company, 20,000 plus employees, 140 locations, I think, just in North America alone. How do they manage that content, and how do they balance it between local and top-down content? And it's fascinating. It's not the sort of conversation you would normally have when you're trying to close a sale. Like, so tell me about your content mix. But actually, this is talking to customers who've been using the product for a while, have experimented with it, and just talking about their experiences. And I think, that kind of thing is so invaluable.
I mean, in my research, I've kind of, I suppose you've got more like direct talking in with people. I haven't actually done as many interviews. What I've kind of been doing is more like zooming out a bit and kind of looking at, I suppose, like the short to medium term history of technology and the cycles that we're in and the trends that we're seeing and how those trends are moving. And also because of like, the whole 2020 COVID disruption, really thinking a lot about what the future of work looks like, and how our product kind of fits into that, and what the likelihood of what that, insert all the cliches now, the new normal, actually looks like, and how we fit. And again, that's kind of much more zoomed out, like not even really thinking about product exactly, but more about kind of what's the problem and what's the new framing of that problem, and where is this, and what is, if I was kind of a betting man, where do I see the opportunity and the movement in technology as we emerge from one technology cycle to another, which I think we are clearly towards the end of a 15-year technology cycle, about to go into a new one. Again, all of that stuff, like if I was just in the day-to-day running of ScreenCloud and growing ScreenCloud, would we be like really thinking about this as much?
Yeah, sometimes it feels like a little bit of an indulgence to sort of sit back and think about things, but it's actually been really useful. It's the thing I mentioned earlier about it's an exploratory process. And again, working with Scribe, I'd never really heard of this or really thought of this as a concept. So one of the guys was saying that he used to be a journalist, and quite often he would start an article and not know his point of view of the article, and it would emerge just by the process of. I think that's for me, it's been really useful, because I used to, let's say you're right, you've got a chapter and you go, okay, right, I'm going to write a chapter about this, and you're not 100% sure about what you think about it. I found that actually just writing it, actually then you go, oh yeah, actually that doesn't really now make sense, does it? Maybe I can fix it. I'm going to give you a sort of an example. I was plotting a different communications tool on a sort of matrix, and I wanted to have a conclusion that there was a missing bit on the matrix, which is where ScreenCloud fitted. Yeah. And then I realized, actually, why am I trying to do that? Because actually the point is that these different communication tools are going away and they need to be replaced by ScreenCloud. What I'm saying is that all of these things matter, but actually it's interesting to see how some of them are kind of used in a different way. Some of them are used for instant communication, and some of them in a completely uncurated way, and some of them are a lot more preconceived and designed for asynchronous consumption. So this is sort of a little example, but yeah, just as I was writing it, I kind of quite often feel like, oh my God, I need to go back and think about it again because it's not making sense. And actually that process, if you're the sort of person who writes like that, because we'll come on to how we're different, and I guess that's actually quite a good way, I think, of actually getting your thoughts down. Unless you're the sort of person who literally can sort of sit there and go, I can see all this clearly before I've put pen to paper. For me,
it's more like my way.
Yeah, for me, I find it actually a good sort of, it's a forcing function, and it's a way of solving some of the kind of things that you've got in your head that you haven't quite kind of figured out.
I think it would be fair to say that you have a more traditionally good style of being a writer. So, in the Scribe school is as much about it's helping you get from like zero to published, and they do a lot of that work for you. We should probably tag them in this, I guess, to sort of show them some love. in as much as that, actually, one of their other main and maybe even bigger things is about just pulling the damn thing out of you.
Yeah.
Because I think it'd be fair to say that everyone struggles with this kind of like that. And they're very good at kind of demystifying it. It's a process. The first draft is always shit. They call it the vomit draft because it really is bad. And they're kind of very much about this, just do something every day. And that's what you've broadly been doing. I mean, given that you've got a busy job as well, like you have been kind of cracking on through. And what we sort of tried to do, but I think we're going to change tack on this slightly, was like divide and conquer on the chapters, on based on areas that we thought were more interested in. But I'm just bad at I've always struggled writing. Right, I'm actually not a bad writer. Like the written work I do, I think has always been reasonably good. Like, and it's always been well received. It's just that extracting it out of me is like trying to get a confession from a spy. It's like painful. It's not until the nails start to dislodge that actually the words come out. I'm much better at stuff like this, to be honest, like talking things through and thinking about it and explaining it, rather than like sitting there with a blank page writing away. And I tend to kind of have to have a sense of total understanding before I begin, which again is an exact opposite of what you're supposed to do, which is more David's method. So do not adopt the Mark method. It's horrible.
Well, I suppose you have to kind of go with your strengths, don't you? It's like,
yeah.
I mean, I do think I was sort of saying this the other day. I think, we've kind of talked about this kind of slightly jokingly about inbox zero versus scruffy inbox. And I do think it's a little bit like that. Like you are someone who likes to, I think you almost need everything to be cleared out before you can.
Yeah, exactly that.
Whereas with me, I'm totally happy to jump in and do the washing up tomorrow sort of thing.
Yeah, I tell you what, like, if you want to write, writing a book means that almost everything else in my life is fairly up to date. Like, I've remortgaged the flat, like everything's clean, the garden's looking good.
I can't possibly start this chapter until I've
done all those job interviews, I've written those job descriptions, like everything else, like seemed like, oh no, I've got to do this, I've got to do this. Just haven't written much. But it is true. I do kind of need to clear the way before I do anything, which, given my life and given my job, like, it's really almost impossible because he doesn't stop.
Yeah. So I think this is another thing to say. It's like, if you're thinking of writing a book and you're co-authoring it, obviously in some ways it's good because you split the workload. And in some ways it's difficult because you're going to write it, you're going to do things in different ways, probably write at different paces, but also the way we did it is, and again, using the scribe methodology, so they give you you look at the chapter structures. So you go through and you go, okay, well, we kind of worked out that we thought there was 10 chapters. There might be a few more when it comes to it. And then we just sort of broadly said, right, this is what the chapters are going to be about. And then within that chapter, what the key points that we wanted to get across. And then that had a kind of a thread. So it's like, this is the problem. This is sort of the change in the world and where we see things going. And then here is a bit of a solution, a very sort of top level solution. That's kind of how we've structured it.
Yeah.
But obviously once you get into it, what you're not aware of is what the other person's written. And so there is a danger, there will be a danger, I think, but this is the thing they say about the vomit draft, like literally don't worry about it. Just put everything down, accept that it's going to be crap. But at least you've got something down and that's something to work from. So I think when I did my first chapter, Beth went in and kind of made notes on it. And then I found myself kind of responding to them. And then I thought, this is
that's not right.
Not what they told us to do. So what we've got at the moment, well, what we will have is like 3 chapters that you've done with Beth, 5 chapters that I've done, and then another 2 chapters that I'm going to write. You're going to talk to me and I'm going to
try and write them together. Yeah. And it will be a bit of a patchwork quilt inevitably, but then it's kind of all down, and then we go through and flesh it out. And that's actually where my skill set does suddenly become useful. I genuinely think I'm quite good at editing and quite good at, when something's there, I'm very good at kind of changing it and fixing it and, well, not fixing maybe, but like improving it and things like that. When it's not there at all, it's like,
yeah.
I don't think this is an uncommon thing. I mean, they call it blank page syndrome, right? Or I'm sure there's other versions of that. But yeah, no, it's an interesting process. But I think the other thing which I found quite fascinating from researching this and talking about this is unsurprisingly, you don't really write a book like this to make money from selling a book. Like the statistics on book sales are like shockingly low. Really.
Even if a couple of thousand will get you like on some list somewhere, won't it?
Yeah, well, exactly. So that's both kind of depressing and great news.
Yeah.
Because like if you actually wanted to be a New York Times bestseller, probably actually quite easy. You just got to buy a load of your own copies. Like 1,000 copies would probably get you on there. And I think that's honestly how most of them get on there. It's just a big game, right? It's just a big marketing game. And the book itself is marketing. I reckon, this is my prediction, most people won't read it, right? That we will probably send this out to prospective customers or current customers, prospective customers. Yeah, people who are interested, we'll probably buy our own book and send it. Hence, we'll probably start ranking. It's completely for the growth of, this is all about exposing ScreenCloud, positioning ScreenCloud. That's what it's there for, really.
Yeah.
What I also think, and this is kind of, again, the guy who runs Tucker, the guy who runs Scribe, like he kind of says this too, like the book is a tool for further things. So if we put a bit of marketing behind this, and there are some interesting concepts in this book, genuinely, like, I mean, the exploration of like the future of work and transformation, this is definitely something people are interested in. And through all of this research, I've definitely uncovered some stuff, and I know you have too, which I think is like, ooh, this is interesting. Like, and also, I can say that because it's not my idea, right? It's just like, ooh, right, I can see this. This is definitely good stuff.
Also, I found that when we've talked a little bit about some of the things that we're saying, people aren't going, oh yeah, so and so are doing that, or such and such wrote about that. They're kind of like a little bit like, I had a call with someone yesterday, and he was a bit like, I think he either didn't understand what I was saying, or he just didn't. It was just like, oh, you could see
a good reaction.
yeah. But what he wasn't doing is going, oh yeah, that's blah 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 blah. And that to me would be slightly more worrying. It's like if you're just saying that we're thinking about this and just going, oh yeah, well that's, you should read this book or you should read that book because that's exactly what they're talking about. So sorry, I've derailed
you. It's not the same old stuff, like for sure. Yeah. It's definitely, I think there's some good angles on this. And I think there's, like most books, right? So what we're thinking is then, we push this out, then maybe we'll get interviewed on this, and maybe the core high level concepts of which we would be more than willing to just like spill the beans on, in a podcast, because I don't really care if you buy the book. Like all I care is that you listen and that you think, oh, this is interesting. And wow, they're really taking an interesting angle on this. Maybe I'd like to check out what they do more. That's literally it. Yeah. So I could be like, go on a podcast interview, or we could both, go on whatever it might be and totally spill the beans and be like,
yeah, you don't need to
spoilers.
You need to know in the book. Yeah. Yeah, exactly that.
Like, yeah, spoilers.
I think if we were writing this book thinking, I mean, I hadn't even thought. I mean, I'm guessing if any money we get, I hadn't even thought that any money would be made from it. I'm assuming that it would go to ScreenCloud though, wouldn't it? Or would it go to, I don't know, I haven't even thought about
it would go to ScreenCloud, yeah. But I mean, I'm not saying, but I mean, I don't think on the revenue balance of ScreenCloud, it's going to be much of a line,
I don't think so.
International bestseller.
Don't worry, guys. The book's going to save us. Yeah.
Yeah, no, like, but I mean, it's inconsequential, right? It doesn't matter. It's marketing budget. And yeah, we probably will buy a lot of our own copies because, why the fuck not? And buy them and send them. It'll be easier to ship them from Amazon to prospective customers than for us to actually fulfill it ourselves.
Yeah.
So even that would make it worth buying our own book.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, at one point, about a few months ago, well, maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, I was talking to Beth about, well, maybe we should try and write an ebook. But which is fine, but I guess it's that perception thing as well. It's like an ebook.
It will go and live on a shelf. It will live on a shelf. But just the fact that we've done it, and then that's it. Like,
Yeah, I mean, actually, one of this in the Tucker from Scribe School, he was talking about. I mean, he might have been cherry picking a bit, but he was talking about the impact on revenue from the book. So again, like for businesses, like zero impact on revenue in terms of book sales, but impact on revenue in terms of what people could sort of say. I mean, I guess probably more for consultancies in this time because it's probably easier to tie it in than if you're a product company. But if you're a consultancy and you've written a book and someone says, I read your book, I really want to talk to you. And then you win, $100,000 project with them, then hey, that couple of months you spent writing the book, or a bit more probably, has paid for itself. And I think that's what he was saying. And he did have some numbers around it. I can't remember what they were, but I always take those numbers with a pinch of salt. But I think, yeah, for us, it really, it's not, this isn't about, becoming a well-known author or anything like that. But if we can turn around and say, you know what, that book allowed us to have even 5 conversations with people that we never would have had before, who were significant enterprise level customers, then I think it's been worth its while. And, you know, the side benefit to us is that it's really helping us clarify our position.
Yes.
You know, and, you know, we want to move towards a different point of view to traditional digital signage. And what I've realized is, you know, the idea of coming up with a kind of new category, if that's what it is really not easy. You really can't sit around for a couple of hours and brainstorm.
No.
You know, oh, I've got a really good mission statement. Great, there's your category. It just doesn't work like that. You need to really articulate what the big change in the world is, and really how this is going to be impact the customers rather than you as a company.
Yeah, it's like all genuinely tough things in life. Like, there is no silver bullet, right? As much as, I mean, anyone selling silver bullet theories is just, you know, snake oil. I'm using all of the different terms today. But the reality is, anything tough, anything hard comes from putting in the hours, putting in the thinking, iterating, and then it emerges. Like, there just isn't a formula for anything else apart from focus on it, put in the time, put in the energy, put in the mental stress of like trying to get there, and then you get there. It's not there's no quick fixes really in hardly anything in life. And so much of our industry does sell that, which is awful, really. I don't just mean literally, I mean just generally, like business and stuff. There's all this stuff. The reality is, you just got to get on with it and get going and just incrementally moving through. But you have to have these moments where, you know, and I think this is where the byproduct of the book is really fortuitous, is that this was the time for us to really go deep on the thinking again, which I think really the last time we went this deep on the why and what we're trying to do was really 2015, 2016, like right at the very beginning, because it was like, and you know, we had a different objective at that point, which we achieved. But now we have a new one. And actually, apart from like the odd few days here and there of like really thinking about that and just kind of all sort of taking for granted what that objective really is, this has forced us to go and really question a lot of it. And a lot of what we were going to do hasn't changed. Yeah, it was right. But at least it's validated and just become really cemented. But a few new things have come out, which are like, okay, maybe we were a bit wrong on this. Like, one example being that I think we were swinging very much towards internal comms and thinking this was an internal comms thing. But as we then went and literally explored the internal comms industry, we realized that that is more of a partner than what we are. It's something we work with, but not something we work with exclusively. And so, you know, that was a conception which I'll put my hand up. That was me that thought that was the way to go. And I was wrong. Not completely wrong, but wrong enough. And only through the deep thinking and that really came through. So, I think there's a load of good byproducts from it, of which one of the byproducts may be a not very good book. But I'm kind of all right with that, it not being a phenomenal work of art. I mean, knowing us, it won't be bad, right? I mean, like, we never put out anything which is truly terrible. We just I think respect.
Actually, when we keep talking about Scribe, but one of the things at the beginning is they ask you to write out what your biggest fear is, and most of it is like looking like an idiot, like I suppose, or I don't know. It's possible that we produce this thing and go ta-da, and people go, what?
And they won't even read it. See, like, honestly, like, that's the thing. It's like, all right, have you read it? No. Oh, neither did I. As long as the headline salient points are solid, of which I already know they are, because they are. There's some good stuff. Like, this is interesting content. If you were to boil it into a 1 hour chat or and it probably will become something like that, like a a YouTube video talk, or I don't know what it will become, but there will be like a boiled down version of it. So you don't have to put yourself through 8 hours of listening to our ramblings.
Yeah.
The salient points, like they're relevant, they're valid. There's no question of this, like, because they're macro. They're not the things that we thought were important. It's stuff that's already been decided upon that is important, or is a trend, which if you ignore it, then you're foolish. And that's good stuff. Like, people want to know that stuff. And then, like, go back to the very, very kind of like, let's say you've got two vendors. You're not quite sure which vendor to go with. You're no expert in it, but one wrote the book on it. I mean, I'm sorry, but that's the one you're going with.
Yeah. Why wouldn't you? Actually, what we should, in the sort of closing sort of 5 minutes or whatever, maybe we should just talk about what we're doing to surround the book, like how we're kind of promote. Because obviously, what we realize is this is a big investment from our point of view in terms of time. We're also paying Scribe Media. That's not inexpensive as well. So we've made a commitment. Actually, just doing this podcast further cements the commitment, because we don't.
Don't get out.
Embarrassing. Like, we've spent company money, we've spent company time, we've done a podcast. But the other thing we're doing is
so much guilt.
We're creating. So Tony, who's sort of sitting the other side of the camera here, he's creating a docu-series. Oh man, it sounds so. When I say this, I was like, oh my god!
Stop being so British.
Can my ego get any bigger? But
own it.
It's
fabulous.
So what we decided to do is, like, look, we need to put, this is, we're not going to write loads of these books. So we need to kind of make the most of it. So we've decided, or Tony decided, with Beth, who was our head of content, who's since left, that, and with Jürgen as well, that to kind of try and follow us on the journey a little bit. So we've, he's been interviewing us, interviewed my wife briefly, kind of just, and we've been uploading videos, just short videos of the struggles that we've been having. So we're trying to hopefully kind of document the process of writing a book.
Feels most like it's almost all been struggle.
Yeah, none of it's good yet.
Balance it out with some good. Oh, and actually we did some stuff now.
Yeah.
It's like a docu-series of like, and then it'll be like, in the last episode, book.
I'm slightly worried that the headline that might come out of this podcast is ScreenCloud writes book that they expect no one to read. But
no, I mean, let's be honest. Like, I've got so many books on my shelf which I haven't read. Like, I mean, that's just like, the reality is, I mean, that's like one of the points I actually talk about in content in like one of the sections I'm writing, having ghost written, but it's still the thinking is like, let's take like, this is actually really true. Let's take a concept. Let's say it's a kind of, if you were to really explore a true concept, you would probably write an academic style paper that's likely to be peer reviewed, like highly sourced, evidence oriented, could be on the back of 3 years research, an academic thing, right? If you really wanted to thoroughly go into something.
Yeah.
Now, the audience for academic papers is small. The amount of people who actually go and read those are really just other academics. So let's say, but nonetheless, it is if you take the medium, that is probably about as good as it gets on the publishing scale. The next level above that is probably what we're doing, the book. You say, okay, I'm now going to take that academic paper, I'm going to make it a little bit more accessible, a little bit more, wider audience friendly. I'm going to maybe simplify some of the concepts, which are a bit like, woo, mind blown, and I'm going to make it a book. But still, look at the numbers. Not that many people actually read these books. All right, but let's make it a bit more accessible then. I really want to reach loads of people. Okay, let's turn it into a podcast series. All right, that's a bit more digestible, a little bit more in chunks and less work to do. Just got to listen to it. And you go on and on. Then it could be the YouTube video, 1 hour slides, kind of giving you the salient points. Or it could be being interviewed on someone else's podcast and just spilling the beans in 20 minutes about, if there's really anything you wanted to know from it, I would probably take this, this, and this, and not even bother reading it.
And then ultimately
on and on.
And then ultimately we condense it into a TikTok video.
Yeah, literally through the medium of dance, I will tell you the secrets in 20 seconds. But that would then probably reach, well, no doubt, because, I don't know,
100 people.
That could reach millions.
Yeah.
And it really comes down to like, what's your objective, right? Now,
I think with me, I don't know about you, but so the books I do, I do read them all, but I don't read. I read them all, but I don't read all of them. If you sort of mean. So even something like Remote.
okay.
What I mean is, I read all of the books that I buy, but I don't read them all to the end.
Okay,
So
yeah, so you don't make it all the way through until you got to the point, and I
I
think
think
it's fair enough. You can never go like, I think I got it now. I
I think I
abandoned
get the
shit.
concept. Yeah. So with Remote, for example, by
That wasn't a very long one, though. I mean,
no, but it's like
even I read that to the end.
after but 2/3, you were on a plane. After 2/3 of the way through, you're like, you know
Oh,
what?
okay.
But you've got time. Like, but 2/3 of the way through, you're like, do you know what? You're not telling me anything new. I get it. I believe
Yeah,
you.
right. Yeah. Just
Um,
cementing it after that.
but yeah, but so I suppose the other thing then as well, just coming back to the how we're promoting this again, is that we've got a website, and we're also looking for anyone who wants to talk to us about this.
Oh
And
yeah. If you want to be featured in this tomb,
masterpiece.
this instant penguin classic, yeah, you could have your name engraved in history by being part of it. Like, all seriousness, actually, it is, as we kind of said, this book isn't about just our opinions. I mean, yes, we are framing it around what we think, but we're framing a much wider collective of knowledge. And frankly, the most interesting thing is to hear other people's stories and other people's experiences. And so, yeah, if anything to do with digital transformation, how you communicate, how you connect in a different way, how this hybrid work from home but being in the office is going to change things, and how and also what is a more modern way of actually communicating to your company, like not the old school ways of doing things, then get in touch.
Yeah. And it could be to your company, but it could also be to your customers. But yeah, how are you using how are you using data to visualize key aspects of your business, and how you connect people in different locations, in different departments, all those sorts of things. Yeah.
And it's going to be brilliant. And we dare not know when we're going to publish this, but we are kind of like doing it now.
Yeah.
So time is of the essence. And the website is theconnected.company. So that's what the name of the book is, The Connected Company.
Yeah.
So theconnected.company. It will give you a bit of a landing page there. Yeah. What else are we supposed to do? That's kind of
so
it.
yeah, I mean, hopefully if you're thinking of writing a book or you want to help us write ours,
reach out about that. I mean, we have actually genuinely binged on how to do this, the process. We do now know a thing or two about doing it. We're in the middle of it, in the trough of sorrow, I guess. But I think we have educated ourselves on this process and what the expectations are and the why, to a point where I think if you were actually thinking about it, we could probably give you some primers on what to do. Yeah, and I lay down the gauntlet to our competitors and go, there's another thing for you to try and copy.
They will. Everyone copies us. Yeah.
We've got quite a few clones, but like, enjoy, my friends. That's gonna be fun. But we'll see.
Yeah. Cool. Okay. Well, probably that wraps things up for this episode. Yeah. Until next time.
See ya. Bye.